Ambassador, I'll start this interview with a quote. So, what are you doing apart from piling up excuses to avoid meeting the requirements for membership? Why did not finish your reforms 15 years ago like these other countries? Instead, I keep hearing that somehow the European Union is to blame, that membership is a shared responsibility, that we are making you wait too long. The truth is that membership is your responsibility and you are making us wait too long. After decades of massive support, where our taxpayers' money has gone. This is what you stated a couple of months, I would say a month ago. And apart from the public reactions or outcries that followed after this statement of yours, what the politicians and your interlocutors told you in the meetings that you had behind closed door? What were their reactions about your statement with these findings?
Well, my question was really, how is it possible that in 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, life in all these countries, from Estonia to Bulgaria, was much worse than in the former Yugoslavia. Still, they managed to become EU members 15 years ago, and the countries that made up Yugoslavia did not. That question still remains. In the meantime, progress in the reforms is stuck, and the sad thing is that everybody knows it. But still, I'll give you a few examples. There is undue political pressure on the election of public prosecutors. There is undue political pressure on the selection of candidates for the Judicial Council. There's undue political pressure on the courts, including now the Supreme Court. Remember the selection of the candidates for the air traffic control in Skopje, which was influenced from the outside. Why is there a lack of proper prosecution of the findings of both the State Anti-Corruption Committee and the State Auditor? There is now recently an attempt by a judge to limit the journalistic freedom and limit the investigative power of the media in a defamation case against IRL. We have the highly doubtful proceedings surrounding Corridor 8. We have the mess in the Judicial Council. And now recently there was these sly little amendments put in the criminal code that in fact destroy high corruption cases, also retroactively, including the SPO cases, and in future will leave corrupt criminals go free. All these things pile up, and my question is, what has this to do with Greece? What has this to do with Bulgaria? What has this to do with the European Union? And the answer is nothing. These are things that happen here internally. Nobody from the outside is to blame for that.
But Ambassador, some say that by giving such statements, you're going beyond your diplomatic mandate and that maybe you're meddling with the country's internal affairs. What do you have to tell them?
Internal, the Netherlands has an enormous stake in this, right? It is not an internal affair. For us, this is also our affair. It is in the interest of my country to support North Macedonia on its path to the European Union. We want this country to be in the European Union. I also consider it my duty to see what's happening with the huge amount of money we are spending here. In my country, people work hard to pay their taxes. They live in one of the most highly taxed countries in the world. When you ask these people, what do you want your tax money to be spent on? They will say their local school, their local healthcare, their local train station, their local police. And we have to be able to keep looking them in the eye and explain to them why their money is not spent on their local hospital, but in North Macedonia. And after our elections last week, you see a rapid growth of parties that are against expansion, or if they are still in favor of expansion, only if the conditions are met, very strictly, the conditions for entering the EU. So, I have the feeling that increasingly North Macedonia is playing with fire, playing a risky game. We will have next year elections for the European Parliament. There will be elections in the United States. And as I said, in my country, the support for expansion is diminishing, and you cannot continue to take that support for granted. You have to enter the EU now as soon as possible. Or I fear that the possibility may vanish, that at some point the door will close.
You bring me to, by mentioning Dutch taxpayers' money, you bring me to the other question. Are you satisfied that the findings in European Commission progress report for North Macedonia are in line with what you said and the critics that you gave in the public? But on the other hand, isn't this a failure of the European Union, which is investing a lot in the reform process of the country, and also of Netherlands, which is one of the highest, I would say, donators and also advocates for a rule of law in North Macedonia?
How can I be satisfied with a report that shows huge shortcomings and even decline, backsliding?
Because you were like a visionary. What you said was mentioned in the report.
The EU works on these reports for months, and we contribute to the reports. No, I more or less knew what was going to be in it. No, I'm very dissatisfied with the report. I much rather would have seen a report that showed North Macedonia on the right path. And also, to construct this as a failure of the Union, I don't see that. I mean, what has the fact that your roads in your beautiful country are all lined with garbage? What does that have to do with the EU? I feel disappointed. I feel disappointed that because my idea was that this country was, when I came here more than 4 years ago, that this country was on the right path.
And now? And
now for the past 1.5 years, 2 years, I don't see that anymore. As I said, there is the Union helped putting a lot of structures in place, but they're just ignored. Just when you think something is going to work. Again, I think a very nice example is the air traffic controllers. There were 260 candidates. A Danish company selected 8 of them. We all thought, yeah, now we have finally a transparent and merit-based process. Then the management board said, it says in the minutes, whose children are these? And they added 26 more, amongst which were their own children. So you think it is finally well set up, and still, at the end of the process, it derails. And that is the mentality that is applied, and we see this kind of mess everywhere.
Going back to the people who criticize your public statements, I'm going to quote Foreign Minister Bujar Osmani, who said that he doesn't fully agree with you because things are not black and white, but there is also some gray in between, he said. Among other things, he said it was not North Macedonia's fault that it did not start the membership negotiations in 2019, we go 4 years back, but the process was paused due to the informal French veto or the request for new methodology. So I would say that now he is arguing that maybe there's some kind of blame also on the European side.
I know his thinking well, and regularly speak with him, of course. But in this narrative that somehow blames the European Union for the lack of progress, it always comes back to this, the frameworks, the negotiating frameworks. And in my view, that only detracts attention from what is really necessary, which is doing the reforms. And if you go back to the frameworks, yes, There have been demands in place in the past. In the present, it's the constitutional reform.
Which are not very easy.
In the past, it was the new methodology, PRESPA. My argument is that all this time, the framework was not really important to do the reforms. You could have done the reforms while dealing with your neighbors. You could have done reforms while waiting for the EU to adopt the new methodology. You could have done reforms while effectuating your constitutional change. And that is why earlier I talked about piling up excuses. The frameworks in themselves are not important. You can do the reforms, you should do the reforms, whatever the framework. And I think North Macedonia is not keeping up its side of the deal. Our deal is to get North Macedonia into the European Union, is for the EU to give financial and technical support, and for North Macedonia to do the reforms.
Yeah, Ambassador, but the feeling was in the past years that there were too many sticks and not so many carrots for the citizens, I say, not for the political elite.
If you look,
that was the feeling.
My feeling is that the EU kept up its side of the deal because we spent billions. So if that is not enough carrots, I don't know.
But that is not tangible for the ordinary citizen.
That is not the problem of the EU, that's the problem of the government to make it tangible. But I think we kept up our side of the deal by spending billions and giving all this technical support. But on this side, I see a lack of political will to really commit and to take the hard decisions. And that may be problematic for some interest groups, but it would be so good for the citizens if these decisions were taken. It would help the whole country if these decisions were taken. And in the end, if you don't tackle the core problem, the all-pervasive corruption, etc., it will be impossible to do it. But I think it is high time that North Macedonia fulfills its side of the deal. And as I said, throughout Europe, taxpayers are beginning to ask their governments, why do we continue to spend money, not only in this country, in the Western Balkans, in countries that do not honor their part of the deal, fight corruption, don't undermine democracy, keep up the rule of law. And it is increasingly difficult to answer the questions of our taxpayers.
What can be done to remedy the situation? What are the most urgent things that need to be done? You have commented on several occasions that, let's say, the current composition of the Judicial Council is a body that has lost its credibility.
I think the most urgent thing that needs to happen is a change in mentality. The country really has to want to become a member of the European Union. It really has to tackle the corruption. Without tackling the corruption, in no area progress is possible. So I think the country would be well advised to be extremely carefully protecting its pluriform democracy. It would be well advised to protect freedom of speech. It would be well advised to protect its relatively independent media. Without these things, no progress is possible. What else the country needs to do is up to North Macedonia. It's a sovereign country, so to decide where its priorities are is completely up to North Macedonia. It says it wants to be a member, so it has to pinpoint its priorities in that framework. It's clear that for the Netherlands, the greatest concern is the rule of law. But in the end, it's not our country, it's your country.
What about the process of constitutional changes? You mentioned several things as a priorities. We know that the process is in stalemate due to the blockade of the opposition that doesn't want to give its vote, saying that it will not vote for something that is under Bulgarian dictate. are changes of the circumstances and the content of the negotiating framework possible, as Vamrodopamona is saying?
I've said many times before in public that I consider this whole issue irrelevant. It's not important. And this whole obsession with the constitutional change only, again, distracts from the necessary reforms. The constitutional change is a bilateral agreement between North Macedonia and Bulgaria. It has nothing to do with us. The only thing is that the European Council said, when you have it, we will go on with the negotiation. But again, we talk about a negotiating framework. When this framework is there, still the reforms need to happen. The framework has been negotiated a while ago. It cannot change. So if Mr. Mickoski says after elections he will get a better deal, I don't think that's that is not even realistic. It is impossible. North Macedonia has the best deal it could get. If you remember, Kovacevski became prime minister around the same time Petkov became prime minister in Bulgaria. There were many issues. There were 5 committees that had to negotiate them. Under the guidance of the French presidency, this was narrowed down to one issue, the minorities in the constitution. That was a deal between Bulgaria and North Macedonia. The rest vanished, which is good. I think under the circumstances, this is the best deal Bulgaria and North Macedonia could get. Again, the promise or making the second phase of the IGC dependent on the change has nothing to do with the bilateral deal itself. So, no, I don't see that changing.
But maybe European Union train will leave the station, as you said.
I think it is crunch time. It is high time North Macedonia is going to shape its own future. It's high time North Macedonia becomes the master of its own destiny. And we are there to help.
Thank you very much.